Well, good morning. Happy Wednesday. This time we're going to get in a regular full stream instead of just the 25 minutes we did on Monday. So you might be able to see that I've been doing a little bit of cosmetic work to the way the game looks, and that's because I've been playing with the build, trying to make the build look a little bit more like a proper game. So I just knocked together this loading scene, this loading screen. This is just a static image because the loading screen is going to be thread locked when the loading happens in this very, very early build of the game. So hopefully I'll be able to figure out how to avoid thread locking as far as I possibly can, but all the data right now in the game loads while this fires up. So this just sits there, and then after the 30 seconds it takes to load the game, then we get back into the regular old black and white menu. But I've just been kind of monkeying around a little bit with trying to make it look a little bit more kind of professional and legit. We're not going to be working on this today. I just wanted to show that it existed because we're going to be working on something else. I just wanted to show some progress. So we're going to be working on this. There's these 3 bars, and these are the timelines in the game. And as I said, the timeline acts as a kind of map to this game, and it helps the player to know where in time they are and what's going on. And I have had everything in the timeline crammed into one line. So you had the players, the timeline of the wormhole, so the expanse, its beginning to end, would show up as a time span here, and then behind that, the beginning and end dates of whatever artifact they're currently examining in the inventory. That shows up behind it or somewhere else on the same line. And then dotted across the line are events. And these events are kind of like the quest markers of this game. And hopefully the player will want to visit every event and kind of pop that event off of the line. And all of that was crammed into one timeline. And I think somebody better at UI design might be able to find a way to kind of make that work elegantly in one 2D space like this. I am not that person. So I decided yesterday that maybe the best way to deal with this is to make 3 timelines. They're so spaced out because each bit of the timeline has the information on it, and it has words up above and below. Again, it's a little bit too cluttered, and at the same time doesn't communicate clearly what's trying to happen. But anyway, this is where we're headed now in this iteration of the interface. So what I want to try to do is to try to make this a little bit more visually dynamic on the screen. And so we're going to be working on some code, of course, to try to get timelines to sort of unfold. The main timeline you're going to get is the wormhole line, which kind of shows you where you are in the time span of the game. And then if you're examining an artifact, the artifact's timeline should pop down. And then if there happen to be any active events, the events line should pop down as well. And likewise, if you're not examining any artifacts, then just the events line should appear. So a few things to do first, I think, is that the wormhole one is always going to be on. The artifacts and the event ones are going to kind of appear and disappear as needed. So I think I'm going to put the wormhole timeline in the middle, and artifacts will go above and events will go below. So I'm going to swap wormhole and artifacts here. So wormhole is just called timeline because that's the original one when I thought, just one timeline will do for this. So I'm just trying to see where they live. -30 and -90. So this one goes to -90, and this one goes to -30. I also changed the resolution of the UI, so if we do get to the point where we press play in this game today, you'll see that the UI appears a lot smaller. That's bad on a really tiny resolution like this, but on a full screen resolution, it reads just fine, and it provides me with a little more space to let this kind of inventory screen, UI screen, breathe a little bit. So again, hopefully that's a positive change, but we'll see. So there we go. Artifacts, wormhole, and events. So really, these artifacts and events need to live inside the wormhole timeline. They need to exist in the same spot, because the idea is to have them drop down and then their events and things appear on this. So it's going to be a lot of timing. So we're going to abuse the lean tweening system that I kind of use for absolutely everything in this game. But really the timing's going to be the big problem. So, and it's timing about fading in and out events and all that kind of stuff. So we've got to deal with that as well. So I'm just going to kind of talk and walk through all of this. So I'm going to make the labels on these lines go away, because I haven't thought yet of an elegant way to deal with the visibility of these. So all I'm doing is adjusting the alphas on all of these UI elements. We'll leave the lines themselves because I need to actually work with them. I mean, we could do it in scene, I suppose. We could do it in scene and move it to shaded wireframe, so that at least we can kind of see the outlines of the timelines, and then we don't even need to deal with the lines themselves being on screen. That might help. All right. Okay, where was I? Here we are. Event, artifact. So we're just going to work through all of this. And we're going to see where it leads us. I still think it's going to be ugly. I think my interface is pretty ugly. I haven't really been inspired yet. I haven't really got the sense of inspiration to get this feeling good yet, but it'll come. It'll come. Okay, so the first thing I think we should do is we should note, and I'm going to actually note again with my real pen and my real paper. I think we should note where each timeline exists. So I'm going to just sketch this out really quickly. Super cool dynamic streaming, I know, because you can't even see the paper and pencil here, but that's okay. So artifact timeline is top of the screen, its position is -30, and I believe there's 60 between all of them. So yep, -90, and the next one should be -120. No, -150, because math. Okay. That's good. Now I'm going to collapse all of these down to -90. You'll see why. Okay, everything now just sits right on top of the single wormhole timeline event. I'm going to have to move some of this stuff as well. Well, no, I won't, because it's all attached. Yeah. Okay, so I've got them all in one place. So our very first task, and if this is the only thing we accomplish this morning, I'll actually be really happy that we got that far. So the task is to create a moment where we can move these artifact and these event lines to where they need to go. So we've got to create the function for that. So here's all the time. Here's where the timeline functions start to begin. And we'll get through all of this. We're going to have to split this huge kind of uber setup timeline function. We're going to have to split this up now because there needs to be some timing happening. So I'll have to comb through that. That'll be the next big project. Set object on timeline, clear object on timeline. Turns out I didn't need to have a remove event from timeline function, which is nice. We got the event collection system working, so that's good. So let's do set objects on timeline. Let's work on that. Okay, let's work on this one down here. So let's make a little public function void, and we only need to move two timelines, the artifact timeline and the event timeline. So each of those can have their own function. We'll call this one move out. Let's call this artifact timeline move out. And we'll create another one. Probably could put this into one function, but prototyping, event timeline move out. Sorry about the loud clicky clack of my keyboard. The microphone's right next to the keyboard. Okay. And we're going to hard code the numbers on this, which is silly because if I decide I need to change the resolution or spacing of the system again, I'm going to have to go in and fix these numbers. This is called technical debt. Watch me incur it. I'm going to happily ignore that. I could do it a little bit more dynamically, but I'm not going to. So we're going to lean tween move. And we are going to move. Let's see, there might be an overload of this that takes a rect transform. Lean tween rect. That's not what we really want. This one does. Yeah, okay. So this one takes a rect transform, which is fantastic. So the rect transform we want is the artifact timeline rect transform. And we want to move it to new vector 3. And it's going to move up. The artifact one moves up to -30. And the Y stays the same, I think. So this is where I'm not 100% certain. Oh no, the rect transforms at 120. Okay, and who knows if this is actually going to move it. The relationship here is a little bit unclear in my mind. Okay, and then we need our last function, which is how long this is going to take. And let's see, how long should this move take? Well, let's start with 1 second and see how that feels. And we'll let it, I won't add any other variables to that. It's simply going to be a linear tween, the most boring tween in the world. We'll fix all of that. Make it a little juicier. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing for the event timeline, but the event timeline doesn't need to move to -30, it needs to move to -150. Okay, otherwise everything else stays the same. I forgot that one thing we need to do is we need to fade this in. We need to fade the artifact timeline at the same time that we move it. So that's going to be a little bit harder, I think. Maybe not. because we should just be able to call on the UI item visibility. We should just be able to call one of the fading in functions I built. Fade in direct. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll need to go grab those UI item visibility variables as well. So let's go all the way to the top here. Okay, public UI item visibility. And get another field for that. Okay, there. They exist, we can call them now. Rather than having to call them through a message, we'll just call it directly, which is really good. All right, where was I here? Here we are. We don't even need to lean between it. We just need to do artifact timeline UI viz dot element fade in direct. That's all we need to call. And event UI element fade in direct. All we need to call. Okay. So that's going to stay there. So those should move in. And now we need to do a move out. And you know what? I'm not even going to, well, I need to move them at some point. I don't know. Do we need to have both? I don't know. Okay. So we had to move out. We're going to call this move back. And we'll call it move in. Why not? This is kind of going against a little bit the way tweening systems are kind of officially named. But that's okay. So we're going to call their fade out function, and we're going to call their move function, and we're going to move them back to -90. Both of these go back to -90, which is kind of the home base of the timeline, the main timeline, which is never going to move. Okay, so they should be faded out by the time they get in to the timeline here, or at least be fading and moving. Okay, so that's the moving. Now we need to get a way to trigger these moments when we're actually dealing with the inventory. So that's going to be a little bit harder. Let's just think about this for a moment. Set objects on timeline. So this is where the artifact gets called. So who calls that? And also the events. Let's see if we can get an event. So there's an event. Let's keep looking here. This isn't cycling through each event that we have. No, it is. Okay. That's the player timeline. Okay. Okay, so this is where we're cycling through the events. So if the active events count is bigger than 0, this is where we show those. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so if there are any events, we will set our event pool. What did I call it? Show event timeline. That's what I called it. I don't even know if I need this variable. Just kind of sketching this out. Equals show event timeline equals true. I can't spell true this morning. Nice. And then we're going to get through all of the logic for that. And then at the end of that logic, where we've set all of the events on the timeline, we're going to call event timeline move out. Great. Okay, so that's going to get the timeline to move out to its position. Obviously, we're going to have to come up with the code to move it back in. So if active timeline event counts equals 0, so if there are no active events, or if there are more than we have in the pool, which is a bit of logic, technical debt, we'll deal with that when we come to it later on. Anyway, if there are no events to show, then if show event timeline is true, then we're going to set show event timeline to false, and we're going to event timeline move out. There we go. We're going to move it back out. So that'll be one way to do it. We still need to figure out a way to move those timelines around when we open and close the menu. Because I kind of want to fold and unfold these things when the menu kind of appears. Yeah, lots of timing to kind of work on, but let's think about that later. So we got the events to go. Now let's see if we can do it for the artifacts. So what happens every time we click on an artifact that we are able to get it to run in the timeline? I don't know. Let's look here. Artifact time span, that's going to be relevant to what we're trying to figure out as far as where this stuff gets called. So many artifact time spans. Okay, it's all in this function here. Set object on timeline. It's just simply right here. Okay, great. That's really helpful. I'm just pausing because I'm noticing a problem in my logic on where I'm getting the timeline artifacts from, or the artifact, the things that go on the timeline that represent artifacts. I'm drawing them from the pool, and I shouldn't. I should make some dedicated ones. Otherwise, it's going to get really messy. Okay, good to know. Okay. So if this function is called, then that means we need to say show artifact timeline. Okay. And we'll go through all of the logic for that. And we're going to move this out. Again, I'm going to just stick this at the end of the function once that's all set up, but we're going to have all sorts of, it's going to look messy for like half a second when it moves around. And maybe that'll be acceptable, but probably not. We'll have to fine tune it. Okay, so that's working. So now we just have to say artifact timeline, move out. So clear object on timeline. I think this is where we set the object back into the pool. I think this is where it works. So this is where we'll move stuff, where we'll move it back in. So if show artifact timeline is true, then show artifact timeline is false, and we can artifact timeline move out, move in. See, I'm already getting confused. I knew that was going to happen. Okay, that's working. All right, I'm just going to go grab my bit of logic here. What's this called again? Where are we at? What is this function? Setup timeline. That's not the one we want. We want this one again. Timeline object pool. Public timeline event behavior artifact timeline object, we will call it. Let's keep moving here. Here we go. All right. I'm just going to duplicate some of this code because I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. So I'm going to do the whole bad coder thing. I'm going to duplicate something, comment it out, clutter up my code. It's all right. Artifact timeline object is a timeline event behavior. Great. Artifact timeline object. Great. Okay. Just trying to tidy this up here. Here we go. I know this is making for great watching and listening. So we got a lot of time, but maybe not a lot of quality in today's stream. Okay. Is that enough? I hope so. Just gonna do the little safety thing. Oh, that was bad. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's see what happens. I think it's going to look really bad if it looks like anything at all. All right. Let's compile this and fix any errors. Great. Okay, now let's set up all of those fields that I had opened up. Okay, so the artifact timeline is now this. And the artifact timeline UI_viz is the same item. Here comes the event timeline. Here comes same item. Okay, and I need the artifact timeline object, which is very confusingly named. We'll call it event line 1. We're going to run fade children on this one. See what happens. I hope I can run pre-populate on this object and it'll do it, but it wasn't doing it yesterday. Oh, it did it. Oh, that's good. Let's see if that's enough. No, it didn't like that. Why didn't it like it? Well, because I didn't do that. Silly me. Okay. This is a keep hidden. I'm hoping keep hidden will prevent this whole thing from fading in when it's not supposed to. All right, we'll see what happens here. I think it's going to look terrible. We'll have to fix it. Okay, now we actually got to play the game where we get up to a point where at least the artifact visibility will come into play. Or at least we'll see the artifact timeline pop up. Well, let's find out. This may be all over the shop. Okay. And I've also muted the audio on this one. Sorry. We need to get that artifact timeline to disappear. Nope, that was not the one I wanted. This is the one I wanted. And this one. Okay. Well, let's see what happens. I don't think anything good. All right. Obligatory 13 to 15 seconds while it loads. Let's let it take its time here. Okay. Oh yeah, I also fixed the annoying thing where I had to click twice the first time I ran the game to get the interface, or the ability to kind of move around in the space. I fixed that, finally. I've been looking for that problem for a long time, and I finally found it yesterday and fixed it. Okay, we're just going to assemble one wall and get to our very first architectural fragment. Well, actually, no, we'll have to go around and get all the way to the coin, won't we? Oh, look at that. So when it called fade in, it faded in everything. Let's keep running. Let's just see where we get to. There are also a few other little problems that appeared. Let's keep building this wall up. Another big chore to do, which will not make particularly compelling viewing, but must be done. Another chore is to start switching over all the shaders to my, I hope, more efficient shaders that don't triplicate geometry. Hey, look at that. That worked, though. See that? The artifacts timeline popped out of the main timeline. We have the player span here. We have the lifespan of the coin right here. So that is exactly what we wanted to have happen. So that's pretty cool. That's all right. What happens if we go here and I click on this? Oh, look at that. See, it went back. Artifacts, coin, boom. Nice. All right, I like that. I think I'm going to have to put another one of these timeline objects on the other end with the date. That'll be important. But that's good to see, and I've got to come up with some way of controlling the visibility of these things. Yeah, I've got to come up with that. But that's all right. That worked pretty well. Ooh, I like that. Okay, that was far more successful than I thought it would be. Let me think about why the words are coming up, the labels for each timeline are coming up. Well, because fade children is in place, but this keep hidden should have stopped that. Let's go into our UI item visibility script and just see what the keep hidden thing is actually doing. It may not be doing what I think it is. It's only getting called in one place. Oh, it's not being called in element fade in direct. So I wonder if I need to put this in the element fade in direct. No, because I need to be able to override that. I think they are actually called. I think element fade in is actually being called on this, and they're still marked as keep hidden. Huh. Are they being called? That's an interesting question. Do I have a use debug on this? I do have a use debug. Okay, let's see what happens. Element fade in direct. No, not direct. That's not the one I want. I want the element fade in one. Okay, if use debug, let's log it. UI item visibility and okay, that's all I want to see. We'll see if we get the whole stack when this debug appears. Okay, let's let it compile. Let the little thing spin in the corner there. And then we will turn on the use debug just for the artifact timeline one. And then we'll pick this one back up again and we'll run through the build and we'll see what happens. In fact, we should only have to build the one wall before we see what happens. Here we go. There we go. Look at that. It was called. It was called twice, in fact. Who called it? But still, if element fade in is called, but this is marked as a keep hidden, it should have stayed hidden. It shouldn't have run. So who's calling this? Mouse events revealed item behavior. Goes to the inventory manager. Inventory manager calls it. Oh, there's two different lines in inventory manager right next to each other. Let's figure out what that's all about. Camera canvas name. Overlay canvas name. Right, so I guess it's being called, but is it actually being processed? Yeah, that's just being called. Okay, fair enough for that. But see, it should not get through. Here, let's go turn this off before we cause trouble. to put this debug call right here. Put that in there. Okay. My parent name. There we go. Okay, so this is going to report if the element fade in call actually does manage to get through this object into actually fading in or not. So let's see if that works. It shouldn't, because my keep hidden is true, and this only should work if keep hidden is false. Did it compile already? I guess it did. All right, let's clear that puppy. Here we go. There we go. Okay, it's loaded up. Let's see what happens. It rebuilds, everything's great. Okay, so here's something interesting. I see what's happening. So the timeline isn't actually fading in, but its label in here is fading in because it doesn't have its keep hidden checked. So it's getting called no matter what. I got it. I understand. All right, that's easy enough to do. Let's mark this one as keep hidden, and we'll just see what happens. And I'm going to turn off the debug on this one. It's done its job. Okay, let's try it again. And this will probably be the last run we do of this. I hope to be here again on Friday as we progress through this, but I have jury duty tomorrow, and who knows if I'll be called or not, and if that's true, then I might have to serve on a court case on Friday, in which case I won't be here because I'll be in the jury box. So hopefully I'll see you on Friday. But I may have to do my civic duty, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There we go. That worked. So, yep, only what appeared, we're only seeing what I want to see here, so that's really good. Okay, so that worked out well. Let's rebuild the rest of this and see what happens. Okay. And we will rebuild this wall and this wall, and then everything else will build in, and the ground will fade away, and everything will be exciting. And the empty graves will disappear. I got to work on that timing. It's a little rough. And there's our little coin. Aha, look at that. The artifacts appeared exactly like I wanted them to. That's really good. Ooh, that makes me excited. That just makes me happy that all this kind of stuff worked. Great. Okay, well, cracked it. That's great. That's way more progress than I thought we'd make this morning. Pat ourselves on the back. Congratulations to us. We made the timelines, I hope, a little bit more understandable and at least a little bit more interesting to see. So, success. Okay. On that note, it's a great time to end the stream. It's time to get the kids to school and time to go to work and start the regular day. So, whatever you're doing on your regular day, I hope you're having a good time or at least a tolerable time. And we will see you on Friday, I hope, unless I'm doing my civic duty. All right. Bye for now, everyone.